Alright, before we get into today's video, I just want to say thank you so much for 100 subscribers. Now, let's begin. I like history. I like alternate history. I like alternate history videos. Unless it's these guys, they suck. Do you know what else I like? This. It would explain a lot. What if I were to combine the two? Something no one has done before. That's right. This special will be that. Who better to narrate the whole ordeal is someone I made up just for this video. The Temporacle. Well, let's get started. Take it away.
Well, hello everyone. I am the Temporacle. I am here to tell you a tale regarding the world of Sonic the Hedgehog. There's a storied history in that world. You may not think so, but there is a multitude of stories in that world. There is no better place to begin our journey than by starting from the top. There is no better place to begin than by starting at the genesis of one of the countless characters. More specifically, the character whose origin dates back the furthest. Our story begins with a simple fact. Life is complex, but dangerous. It doesn't matter if it's microscopically small or larger, it's sentient. Our story begins with both. The real Republic was afflicted with a disease that was slowly destroying her on the inside. It is known as NIDS, short for Neuroimmune Deficiency Syndrome, and there is no cure. The caretaker of her grandfather, Dr. Joe Robotic, was so desperate to cure her sickness that it drove him to agree to create the ultimate life form, Shadow the Hedgehog. This being was intended to be the ultimate weapon, a force of sheer destruction that worked for the payrolls of the project, the Guardian Units of Nations, or UN for short. However, Joe still wanted a cure, so he created Shadow to both his and UN's wishes, giving rise to the ultimate life form. Shadow was never able to fulfill Gerald's wish to cure her, for the government feared his power and seized her city. Maria sacrificed herself to save Shadow. He was created to save Maria, but she saved him instead. Tragic irony. One that finds Shadow when he was awakened half a century later. Despite that, he still remained on the side of good, becoming an anti-hero with a tenuous alliance with the heroes of the world, whom they bonded by their shared distaste for the grandson of Shadow's creator. However, there were many instances that could have caused aversion to the tragedy that was the demise of Maria. However, the most interesting of this tale of her life being saved begins when her life was the most at risk. It was a typical day aboard the space colony Ark, and the scientists in it began their daily routine. It was a scientific facility and a place for residents, so it needed to be maintained to the best condition it could be in. The UN was the sponsor of this plan devised by Gerald himself and demanded that those aboard develop weapons for them, ones that were quite unorthodox in nature. This stressful environment for the scientists necessitated a stimulant to ensure they continued working. Coffee. It's the secret power that really drives the Ark. However, in one timeline, the true lifeblood of the space colony ironically led to its downfall. The said facility and its founder, Gerald Robotnik. All it took was one slip in the right place. Our point of divergence begins with a spill of coffee on the ARC's 0G unit, causing it to seriously malfunction. Instead of gravity being disabled like you may think, it became too strong as the backup power rerouted too much energy into the system. A panic set in as the alarms blared, and gravity made it hard to stand. Most people's lives weren't endangered by this event. Most people didn't rely on low gravity to survive. Unfortunately, Maria did. She was placed specifically on the Ark so the low gravity conditions can slow her ailment. Now, however, her condition has become unstable. Gerald panicked upon seeing her granddaughter like this. He knew it was now or never to devise a cure. Even after the gravity was fixed, her condition continued to damage her body. It had passed the point of no return. Gerald needed to think quickly, or else all he had sacrificed morally would go to waste. He searched through his notes of Project Shadow, desperately skimming to find an answer, a cure that could save her life. There seemed to be no luck. He glanced at the tube that housed Shadow and studied every feature of his anatomy to see if there was something, anything, that could guide her to the solution that he so desperately needed. Then it hit him. If he could put all that was her mind, soul, and DNA into the ultimate life form, then she may live. The move was risky. He needed to be precise, as he was working with a ticking clock. He couldn't let her suffer. He started with the easiest part first, her DNA. He knew the inner workings of Shadow, so it wasn't too difficult to insert Maria's genes into the mix. Next was the tricky part. He needed to create a soul. He could theoretically transfer Maria's real soul into the body and avoid the potential ship of Theseus conundrum that could stem from creating a new soul whole cloth. But he had no choice. Maria was writhing, suffering, coughing, and shaking. All symptoms of late-stage NITS. He had no time to transfer his soul. The affliction was moving faster than he would have anticipated in her body. Fortunately, that left him in a tough spot, as he still needed a mental transference to get the body from mind. He needed to perform something messy and risky. He couldn't call anyone over, for he feared he hadn't had the time to do so. Thus, he began experimental brain surgery to physically transfer the mind. He had no choice. Despite never performing such a procedure before, he picked up on what other doctors did in the Ark and excelled phenomenally. Next was the transplantation. He knew that the biology of Shadow allows for rapid healing of cells, so he postulated that it could extend to the reattachment of the brainstem. It was a gamble, but he knew there was a shot. Once the brain was inserted, he observed the body to see if this all paid off. The brain was what he was most unsure about, if it succeeded or not. He was nervous, worried if what he had done was a failure. If he succeeded, he'd be celebrated for overcoming the odds. If he failed, all would turn on him, for what he'd done would be murder. Emotions overcame him despite only being a mere 30 seconds after he implanted the brain into the body. After those 30 seconds, he saw signs of life within the body. There seemed to be no signs of cognitive damage, as she panicked and asked Gerald by name what was going on. She seemed to respond to her name. There was no damage at all, for this new body was not plagued by nits. All looked fine, for it was. This was the best possible outcome he'd hoped for. At least, that's what he thought until he heard a blood-curdling scream emanating from the nearby room. The same room he had operated on Maria in. He realized a horrific realization. He was so focused on the functionality of the new body, he forgot to dispose the old. He told Maria to burn the project plans and flee. Suspicions Gerald had brewed were then confirmed when he talked to the scientists that saw Maria's body. The worst had been assumed, and UN forces were on their way to the Ark to detain someone they thought had gone mad. Meanwhile, Maria gathered every paper relating to the project and set the pile ablaze. Through the sound of crackling fire, she heard the screams of her grandfather down the hall. She followed it into a storage closet, where she found him chained to a pole so Ji Wen could more easily detain him. But the tops linked to the powers of the ultimate life form, she performed a chaos spear to break apart the chain. She escorted him to a nearby escape pod, hoping they could get away to safety. Unfortunately, Ji Wen was already there and spotted them making a getaway. The pursuit led to a room with the escape pod, to which they proceeded to open fire on Gerald. With his last ounce of energy, he put Maria inside the escape pod. She begged and pleaded to no avail with her grandfather, as he sent her to Earth. While the mind may be different, the body still experiences the pain that it experienced originally. You may be assuming from the events that had just transpired here that Maria follows in Shadow's path. However, her story, much like her body, may retain some aspects of the original, but is ultimately completely brand new. In this timeline, Project Shadow never stopped. It was continued by a man who saved the Ark. All the information from Gerald's research he could find regarding the ultimate life form was all surrounding the failure that was the bio-lizard. External help did try to provide a helping hand through the process like they had the original project, but they were dismissed. Faulty projection was covered up as a weapons misfire. He used the data that he could find, and after a tremendous amount of trial and error, created the new ultimate life form. It is no surprise that this too was named after the project that created him, Shadow. Shadow the Lizard. To ensure no one finds out about the project, every scientist aboard was slain. This brings us to 50 years past that event. The grandson of Gerald Robotnik, Dr. Ivo Robotnik, was in search of her in the G-Wen facility. You see, when Maria came to Earth, she was quickly detained and locked away in a stasis pod. She had uncovered her transmogrified relative by sheer accident and sought her out upon reading about Project Shadow. This was no rescue mission, but a recruitment, as the Mad Doctor wished to use her abilities to take over the world. It was a difficult decision for her to make, but Maria reluctantly joined her uncle's conquest. While good-natured, she does not see Ji Wen as an organization worthy of keeping around. It is this, to bringing peace to mankind. With Maria released, GUN realized that now is the time to release their loyal ultimate life form, Shadow. Arriving at its base, Eggman made some observations about Maria that complicated matters for him, despite being somewhat jaded from events that were still fresh in her mind. She still retained her interests. Most importantly, this involved her fascination with nature. Now that she was on Earth and written of her ailment, she was finally able to see the flowers in person. Prior to this, she was never able to see them for herself, but she was always in a state of constant lockdown, so that people could help cure her. It was horrendously tragic, but now that she was free from this terrible condition, Maria was able to freely explore gardens and flora to her heart's content. Something she did such a long time ago. Eggman recognized her longing and saw it as a deterrent to his schemes. To prevent distractions, she was put inside a contained unit in a floral and vibrant environment. Now that she got her wish, she still cannot interact with the new world she longed for, tantalizing the poor girl. However, just like many hardships she finds herself in, she still persists in optimism, while her fate had changed. Her belief in the greater potential of mankind remains. The containment unit was supervised by an armed barracks, so no one could disturb it. Knowing the setup of the situation was a risk, he put his new trusted ally, Rouge the Bat, to stand guard over the capsule that held their weapon. The two talked about stories from the past. Well, mostly Maria did. Things got complicated as a figure approached in the distance. That's when the two were confronted by the famous hero, Sonic the Hedgehog. He didn't expect her to be guarding the girl. Suddenly came rumors of her body capturing an innocent girl circulated. It was all done by Rouge to get Sonic's attention. Rouge figured her betrayal of the Mad Doctor would be simple by distracting Robotnik with Sonic so she could deliver Maria to her bosses at GUN. Sonic recognized her as a GUN agent. Nothing gets by him. Well, nothing gets by his friend Tails, who briefed him beforehand, knowing Rouge would most likely send her back to GUN. Conflict erupted. Sonic advocated for Maria to be free to choose her own path. This began a fight, one which saw speed come up against agility. While the encounter was fierce, Sonic came out the victor in the end. Sonic spun through the glass, an act that fortunately did not harm Maria. With the opening the dash provided, Maria could finally see the beauty of nature up close and personal. After all that hardship, Maria's wish was finally granted. The horizon ahead showed her opportunities that lay before her. It doesn't really matter what happens next, as the only thing that mattered is that Maria was happy. To her, that's all that mattered, for that's all she strived for. course, life is never that easy. As happy as this ending is, Shadow the Lizard had been unleashed and set on retrieving what Ji-Wen once had. However, this new chapter was not just another hardship, as she was able to receive support from her newfound friends. Perhaps the other ultimate life form will discover that friendship has benefits that are beyond what Ji-Wen could provide. Perhaps he will see things the way Maria does. Perhaps not. I will leave you to ponder these possibilities as we shall wrap up this tale. I know nobody likes cliffhangers, but the story teased for the future of this scenario could be for another time. Perhaps another tale could be told altogether. Now, with everything that was said that needed to be said, I do hope you have enjoyed this trip into an altered world. I wish for nothing more than this story to pique your interest. The potential of alternate worlds relating to Sodom may perform, and if this journey into what hasn't been seen before intrigues you, then I shall return to deliver more like this. Goodbye.
Hello my guys, gals, goops. It's me, the guy that got 100 subscribers. But still, unfortunately, not more than most gacha channels. People are gonna watch that more than this. Ridiculous. I'm not mad. Anyway, it's me, Nate. Just Nate. Hit the mic. That was certainly a wonderful episode, wasn't it? It was different, but I think it worked out. Do you want to see more of that kind of stuff? Well, maybe if you subscribe. And also tell me if you want that kind of stuff, because I have plans. Plans that I think you'd like. Anyway, make sure to like, subscribe, please, to get more specials like this. And until next time, bye.